Hi everyone, it's Lisa from My Dreaming Soap. Welcome to my channel and thanks for dropping by. Now today's soap is inspired by the story The Princess and the Pea. Now I'm sure you probably know it, but anyway, there once was a prince and he was looking to find a wife, and he only wanted to marry a genuine princess, and he was really struggling to find one. Now one evening in the middle of a terrible storm, there was a loud knocking on the palace doors, and the king went and answered the door, and there, standing out in the pouring rain, was this wet, bedraggled young lady. She declared that she was a princess and could she come in and seek shelter from the rain. Now the queen was really sceptical about this young lady's declared status. Probably because she looked such a state. So she hatched herself a little plan. She went scurrying off up to the bedroom with some peas, like you would, and she put the peas on the base of the bed. She then went round and gathered all the mattresses that she could find, and she stacked them one on top of the other, all on top of the peas. She got a handy ladder, stacked it next to the bed so that the princess could climb up and sleep on all of these mattresses, and that's where she was to spend the night. So the next morning the queen inquired how the princess had slept, and the princess said she'd had a terrible night. She'd tossed and turned all night and she felt like she was black and blue all over, and that there must have been something in the bed. Well, hearing this, the queen was thrilled and decided that she truly must be a genuine princess, because only a genuine princess would be so sensitive. So, in the good old way that fairy stories end, the princess married the prince and they all lived happily ever after. Come on, let's go make some soap.
I thought I'd start off today by going into some of the planning that I do when I'm designing a soap. Now obviously if you don't want to see this planning stage, then just jump forward to the soap making. That's absolutely fine. So first of all, I'll always draw out a template in the size of the soap that I want to make. So mine here is 9 centimetres tall by 6 centimetres wide. And then that gives me a good idea of how I'm going to build my soap. Now for my Princess and the Pea, I wanted to obviously make a soap with lots and lots of mattresses in that soap. So first of all, I wanted to start with sort of like, you know, one of those sort of flouncy layers at the bottom that you sometimes have on a bed. And then I'm going to have a thin mattress. And then obviously I need to bring my pea in. So in will come my pea. And then all I'm going to do is then fill the mould full of lots and lots of other mattresses. Now at this stage I'm just kind of getting a rough idea of how this soap is going to fit together. What I'll do at a later stage is think about the colours and then obviously how I'm going to put the soap together. Okay, so I'm just dropping in some colours here. Now I did actually sit down afterwards and actually plan exactly what colours I wanted to use where, and when I wanted to do maybe a mattress that had some type of swirl in it, or maybe a stripe in it, or an embed, all those sorts of things. Now I'm doing this on computer purely because I want to show you guys how I normally do my planning. Often I'll just do this in a pad, you know, and I've got a pad with lots of my designs in, but sometimes I do it on computer, sometimes I'll do it on a pad. Generally just depends where it is I fancy sitting when I'm doing a plan for a soap. And then I want to think about the other aspects of the soap. So for example, my bed needs to have some little bed legs at the bottom and sort of a headboard and a footboard on the bed at the top of the bed. And then my princess is going to need a ladder so she can get on top of all these mattresses. Now I had a good long think about this, and if you know me, I hate things that don't go all the way through the soap, but there really was no way I was going to be able to do all of these mattresses and a ladder and make the ladder go all the way through the soap. So therefore I decided for my ladder that I would do an inlaid design technique. I really hate anything like painting mica or doing a painting on the top of the soap because that literally washes off as soon as the soap gets wet. At least with an inlaid design, you actually scrape away the soap and then fill it in with some soap dough. So this ladder should last for a good number of uses in the soap. And then also when that ladder wears away, you're still going to have the rest of the design of all the mattresses and everything still left there. The other thing I noticed when I was doing my ladder, and this is why it's good to plan things, is where I first positioned it more towards the edge of the bed, it then went over the little foot of the bed, so you couldn't see that. So it made me conscious that when I actually make my soap, I want to shift that ladder more towards the centre and making sure I can get it between the foot of the bed and that P. And then let's think about the princess herself. Now, I'm not going to do a full-blown model of a princess because I want her to be underneath a blanket. So I'm going to do a head of a princess, and I am going to do a very basic body shape so I can then cover that with a blanket. And again, I'm thinking about my planning as I go through and how and when I want to add these things to my soap. So the colours I'm going to be using today are neon yellow, neon pink and golden shimmer, all from Mica Mama, and electric blue and purple passion from You Make It Up, and then lastly some titanium dioxide. Now I'm going to do my colours in a slightly different way to how I normally do them. And what I've got here is I've got some little pots and I've put in those little pots the maximum amount of colour that I'm allowed to use for each of those colours in my assessment. And I'm just going to play around with the colours and mix them as I go through the layers of the embed to produce a whole variety of colours, but just sticking to the amount of mica that I'm allowed to use in each of those colours. I'm going to be using Cranberry Relish fragrance oil from Nature's Garden because I'm going to be having this soap as one of the soaps in my Christmas lineup. So the first thing I'm going to do is make some little soap dough embeds, and these are going to be for the legs at the bottom of the bed and the head and footboard for the top of the bed. Now every now and again you may see throughout this video me sort of doing extra things. I am, because this is such a sort of complicated embed, actually making 2 loads of this soap at the same time, so if you see me doubling up on stuff, you know why. So my first layer that I'm going to pour is going to be for the under the bed area. So I'm just going to do this in white because I want a white border going all around the bed. So I'm just simply going to mix up the amount of soap that I've calculated that I needed, add in some titanium dioxide and the right amount of fragrance oil, and just pour that into the mould. Now I'm not sure how well you can see this, but can you see that I've put a couple of layers of foam board into my mould here, because I want to use this embed in this mould, but I want it to be narrower so I can get the white border all the way around it. And then I'm just going to grab those little bits of brown soap dough that I extruded, and I'm going to put 2 of those in the base right towards the edge to form the legs of the bed. I let that layer set up for a little while, and then because I want a scalloped effect at the bottom of the bed, I'm just going to scrape that layer back. Now excuse the state of this funny little scraper here. This was just literally some scrapers that somebody ordered at the wrong size, so therefore I remade them, and I've just kept hold of these wrong size ones, and they turned out to be the perfect size for what I needed today. Now the rest of the embed, apart from putting in the P, is just lots and lots of different layers. So therefore, rather than talk you through every single one of them, I'm just going to pop on some music. I'm not necessarily going to pour every single one of them on the video, and we'll go through and deal with the rest of those layers to make up all those matrices.
There's some stains on your photo, little cracks on your rusty frame, stuck in the mud, but it's okay. I don't have the pieces of you buried in the flashbacks. All these wicked nightmares has gone cold. Now we go way, way back, as far as way back goes. Still standing by your side. You know I'll be right here when all the monsters come. I've got you. You grew old in suburbia, where pretty demons never show, shifting shapes in millennia. But you're okay. I don't have the pieces of you buried in the flashbacks. All these wicked nightmares has gone cold. Now we go way, way back, as far as way back goes. Still standing by your side. You know I'll be right here when all the monsters come. I've got you.
Once I've finished pouring all the layers, I'm just going to add those 2 extra bits of brown soap dough for the bed head and the footboard of the bed. Now, in between times while I was waiting for some of my layers to set up, I made some princess heads by just rolling up some plain soap dough. Now, she's a bit of a baldy at the moment, but we'll sort her out in a minute. I also made some fairly simplistic sort of body shapes, because remember we're going to cover these up with a blanket. Now, I did decide I wanted these to be coloured, so it looked like the princess actually had some, I don't know, some pyjamas or nightgown on or something. I didn't want the, I just had these funny visions of, as you use the soap, the blanket might wear away, and if I'd done skin colour underneath there, it might look like you had a naked princess on the top of your soap, and that would never do. So here she is in her pyjamas. So that's my embed complete, so I'm just going to seapot this overnight and then we'll unmould it the next day. So here's our embed the next day. Now, because we made it in a straight-sided mould, all of the mattresses line up together and just form a solid block. So I'm going to go through with a scraper and just remove a little bit of soap in between each of the edges of those mattresses so that we get sort of some curving of the mattresses and they look a little bit distinct from one another. And once I'm happy with the shape, I've put the embed back in the original mould that we made it in, but I've obviously removed those extra bits of foam board, so we've now got the full width of the mould. I've just mixed up some white batter because I want white soap all the way around my bed. And then I just want to pour it down the sides of the embed just to fill up the mould. Now this was actually a surprisingly tricky operation because I didn't really want to spill too much over the top of the embed, and I wanted to try and get everything nicely down the side so it filled the sides up properly without leaving any air gaps. Now I found with this I really couldn't avoid getting anything on the top of the embed, so what I chose to do was just always pour in the same spot and have the batter flow through the mould, and that way I'd only have one area between the princesses that I needed to clean up, rather than if I'd poured all the way along the mould I would have potentially got white soap batter all over that embed and had a lot of clean up to do. So once my white was all poured in, I then just spent a little bit of time sucking up that extra little bit of soap batter, and that combination of a little pipette and a paintbrush cleaned that area up quite nicely. And then once again that gets left to saponify overnight before we finish the soap off. So the next day, again, let's cut our soaps. Now remember, they're not quite finished yet. We still need to put a blanket and some hair on the princess and also a ladder onto the soap. So the next job I'm going to do is the ladder going up so the princess can climb into the bed. And I'm doing this now because obviously I want it underneath the blanket. So literally all I'm just going to do is take a ruler and just scrape away some of the soap in the shape of a ladder. And I'm going to do this for every single bar first of all. And then I'll go back and I'll just fill them in with some brown soap dough. Now you may notice here that the princess has already got a little blanket on her. I originally did the blankets in a pink and white soap dough, but because I rolled it quite a lot, it all sort of dried out a little bit and I really wasn't happy with how the blankets looked. So therefore what I did is I removed them and I redid them. So ignore the pink blanket at the moment and let's just look at how we filled in the ladder. So I've got some really quite soft soap dough. Now this soap dough is fully saponified, so it's fine that I haven't got my gloves on and my hands are nice and clean, and I'm just gently pushing that into all of the gaps that I scraped out from that ladder. And then I'm just very, very gently going over this with a nice flat bladed palette knife and just scraping away all of that excess so we've just got the ladder left in the brown. And I always much prefer this sort of inlaid design technique to any sort of mica painting or something, because this will actually give you a decent thickness of soap for this design, so it's going to stay on for a good number of washes. So as you can see here, I've got my soaps now with some green blankets on. I didn't video the green blankets. I got up sort of like at 1:30 in the morning and just didn't really like the pink blankets at all. It bothered me. So I got up out of bed and I redid them and made some green ones. That also, obviously, because I removed them, then pulled off the hair. So now all I'm doing is I've just mixed up some sort of golden soap batter, and I've just got a round piping tip in a piping bag, and I'm just piping that hair back onto the princesses. I'm trying not to make it too neat. I'm trying to make it quite scruffy as I pipe through, you know, as if she's had a bit of a bad night and has been tossing and turning. And then here are some pictures of the final soap. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you like the soap. If you do, it'd be great if you gave me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see what I'm doing in the future, why not subscribe to my channel? If you've got any questions or comments, then please leave them in the comments section below and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching everyone. Happy soaping!